All right, welcome along to the RTÉ Soccer Podcast. Raf Diallo here. You can watch or listen to this podcast on RT.ie, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. It might feel a bit Groundhog Day, but this week again, we'll be chatting a little bit about the impending appointment to the next Ireland men's manager. We'll also be reacting to the League of Ireland weekend and looking ahead to the Champions League quarterfinals, second legs after last week's brilliant first legs. And I'm joined this Monday morning by ex-Ireland and Blackburn winger Keith Treacy, former League of Ireland, Bolton, Hibs and Cardiff City striker Eoin Doyle, and RT Sports Conor Neville, and we'll start on the impending appointment of the next Republic of Ireland manager. The suggestions are it's going to be this week, and to go back to Mark Canham, the director of football, the FAI's quotes back in March when they were unveiling John O'Shea as the interim manager. We're really near the end of the process, and that's confidential, so I can't answer the question directly, unfortunately. But we are really at the advanced stage of the process for different practical reasons, including contracts. We can't confirm that until early April. And Conor, what's your definition of early April? I think it's the 15th here. I can see it on my calendar. And if it's this
Well,
week,
we're really pushing the edges of whether this can be considered early April. I mean, certainly, we're stretching the boundaries of that. I'd say we're surely into mid-April at this point. Yeah, it's very. It's. I mean, I don't really know what's happening myself, and I don't know if you heard much, but I mean, the presumption, I suppose, is that when Canham sort of hinted at this announcement and that they needed to iron out there were existing contractual obligations that needed to be ironed out, that this was Gus Poyet that we're talking about. Now, I don't know. I mean, I believe Greece still had a game to play against Georgia.
they did, yeah, they did.
So I'm not sure how he could have even been convinced at that point. We've heard that Carsley long ago has been ruled out. So, I mean, their names obviously have been floated. Obviously, they've flown to the top of the bookies' odds on possibly spurious grounds and then have been ruled out. So it seems that the only one left is John O'Shea, which would be, I mean, it's nothing. It's no commentary on John O'Shea himself, but to note that the FAI will have then spent about 6 months on this exhaustive managerial search and wound up with a guy who was part of the management team already. I mean, it looks slightly chaotic, and I don't know how they're going to spin that.
Yeah, and I suppose one more for me on this in terms of the media point of view, because this is the side of the fence we're both on, and as you've mentioned, we've had this cycle of months and months where you have a name floated within 24 hours, it gets chopped down and ruled out. And what have you made about that sort of, I suppose, that vacuum, which is, I suppose, partly because the FAI have been able to at least keep leaks to a minimum?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be inclined to be cynical and wonder bookies. There's some smart play by bookies to rope people in. I mean, I heard that Solskjaer happened. I believe Solskjaer happened to be in Dublin for a bit, and this is why he tumbled in the bookies briefly. But it shows the tiny morsels people are existing on with these things. I mean, the Chris Coleman one when he became a shoe-in briefly before being ruled out. I mean, becoming a shoe-in is the sort of precursor to being ruled out altogether in this whole race. I believe that may have had something behind it. Did it? I mean, you might know more than me on that.
I think he was considered at one point and then, yeah, ruled out. And similarly to then Solskjaer, then in January, apparently there was a short conversation. He said no, and the news emerged a few months later.
Yeah, I mean, it resembles, I mean, the famous stories from back in the day of Philip Trousier, who famously was, people were rushing to the bookies. People were already spending their money on Philip Trousier, in their head. It resembles one of the searches back then. The Trapattoni one was a particularly long one. It took several months, and Trapattoni's name emerged very much out of left field and very late in the race after all the Terry Venables shenanigans and all the rest. But this one, I'm certain this has surpassed it in terms of length and sort of comedy value at this point. I mean, and yeah, we ended up with Trapattoni that time, and yeah, I think it looks. I mean, who knows at this point whether a name is going to emerge that we haven't heard of yet? It's hard to imagine a name could emerge that hasn't been mentioned yet, but it looks like it probably will be John O'Shea now.
Yeah, and regardless of the name, Keith, or whoever emerges, if it does end up that is this week, that there is going to be an appointment and presumably an announcement. If the names, like, and in terms of the people who have been definitely contacted, like Lee Carsley, Damien Duff, sort of very briefly before he sort of shot that one down, Solskjaer, Lennon, Poyet, Anthony Hudson, Chris Coleman, Roy Keane, Anthony Barry. If all of them collectively, who are each one different to the next, are the answer, what's the question?
What's the question? I've no idea, Raf, but it's absolutely shambolic at this stage, isn't it? I remember, I think it was Damien Duff about a month ago said it's getting embarrassing now. And let's not forget, I know Stephen Kenny lost his job at the end of last year. He was a dead man walking for an awful long time, for probably about 6 months of the last campaign as well. So this has been going on an awful long time. And it seems like the FAI are circling round again, because as far as I understand it, they spoke to Gus Poyet early doors. They were feeling him out. They've gone back to him, offered him the job, and he said, no, thank you. Lee Carsley's not too interested. They went initially to Anthony Barry to see where he was. He's not too interested either, but they've come back around and asked him again, apparently. Willie Sagnol is not interested. Obviously, he's going to the Euros with Georgia. So we're in a very shallow pool, a really, really shallow pool at the minute, and it's getting embarrassing. It really is. And friendlies in June. So yeah, the next competitive game's the English in September. You know, this just keeps rumbling on and rumbling on. I think John is not a bad option. I know a lot of people are looking at his managerial experience. He hasn't got a lot of that. John is not a bad one for me, but the likes of a Brian Kerr has to go with him. It has to happen. You have to be hand in hand. I think if John comes in, all this noise will come out about, you know, he's never managed the club. But if Brian comes along, or managed the country, Brian comes along, he has that, you know, just that wealth of knowledge that you need. He can handle people. He's a very, very good manager. And he gets his point across really well. You know, you see him on the media speaking about the game as well. So he understands the game really well. And if those two come in, I think with Glenn Whelan, in the last 2 games, we've already seen a little improvement in the middle of the pitch. Look, I know we lost the 2 games, but the distances between our back four and our midfield too was a lot better. It was a lot tighter. We were harder to play against. So the little basics of the game have got an awful lot better. I know there wasn't an awful lot at the top end of the pitch, but again, we bring the opposition into account there. So I don't think John is by any means anybody's first choice, but somebody who has 118 caps for the country and played so many years at Manchester United, I think we can forgive his managerial CV and think, look, there's not a lot of other people that fancy you, so why not give it to John?
Yeah, and I suppose, Owen, from a player's perspective, and even maybe bringing it to your experiences at club level, what's it like as a player sort of waiting to find out who the next person in line is going to be?
Yeah, it can be quite difficult as a player, because you don't know where you're going to stand, obviously, until this new manager comes in and he kind of gets to see you play and see how you are as a person, etc. So all the players will be anxious, and kind of like, if this was, I think it's 20 weeks now, that'll feel like about 40 weeks to the players in that squad, I'd say, and the lads in the brink of the squads. They'll be definitely keen to get this new manager tied down, so they know where they stand going forward. But the whole process, like, I kind of quite feel sorry for the FAI and all this. I think when Stephen left, they thought they kind of had the roost of the whole world, maybe, and international managers to go with. But then when people realise what the job entails, it's not a well-paid job in comparison to what you can get elsewhere. The personnel isn't great in the sense of who we're up against in our groups and stuff, and it's a great job for the likes of John. That's how I look at it. And then when you look at when they brought in John on this interim basis and the team around him, for me, that, like, for an interim team, that was too good. You know, if you have Brian there as a mentor, and you've got Paddy, who's an established coach in the Premier League now the last few years, and Glenn learning his trade alongside John, I think they're worth a go. Give them the next 2 or 3 years, see where we stand. And it's, for me, as I said previously, the manager now isn't quite that important, in the sense of, I think in 4 years' time, with all these good young lads coming through that are doing very well, when they're embedded into the first team, that's when we really need to go after and maybe pay the big bucks for a really good manager. And that could be still John, if he's the man that holds down the job and he does well. But I think in the next 4 or 5 years, that's when we will be actually challenging for qualification.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see on that one. Let's see.
Is anybody, you know, Mark Canham talking about, you know, we have somebody in place. The way he was speaking, it was like the contract is signed, it's in the desk drawer, we're just going to whip it out in April and it'll be done and dusted. Clearly, that's not the case, because up to about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they offered Gus Poyet the job after Greece didn't make the Euros. We had Stephen Kenny before that coming out and saying, I think we can beat Ukraine, I think we can top the group, we're not going to play this British style of football. Is anybody getting any media training here and how to deal with the media? It just seems off the wall stuff. I mean, Mark Canham has put the FAI under so much pressure now to get this done over the next couple of days. And Stephen Kenny before that, the way he dealt with the media in terms of expectations with this new team, some of it was absolutely off the wall. I think they just need be a little bit clever about how they speak to the media and the expectations they get on themselves. Because, like I say, they're putting too much weight on themselves now. They're scratching around, in my opinion, looking for a manager, and they're very, very close to pressing the panic button.
Yeah, as it appears, but they seem to have at least suggestions from outside. It looks like it'll be this week that an announcement will be made.
Do we know if Kerr is going to be involved? Because he had rubbished the idea he was going to be involved. Is there any suggestion that he? No, we don't know.
No, we don't know, and there's no definite confirmation that it will be John O'Shea either, which again complicates things.
Look,
But
I reckon as of now, John wouldn't even know if he's going to be the next manager. You know, I think we're all forgetting here that I think apparently they offered it to Sagnol as well, and we had a situation where Greece are playing against Georgia in a playoff, and basically the loser got the Ireland job. Which is a very unique thing. Now, these are the rumours that were going around at the time, but I can't see how a certain association can put two contracts on the table to both managers and say, listen, this is going to get the job and secure their future. So it's really up in the air. Obviously, the rumours last week that Anthony Barry was offered it again off the back of him leaving Bayern Munich, but I'd imagine he'll want to stay in club football. And he's obviously with the Portugal squad. He's actually got a chance of winning the Euros now when he goes into the Euros in the summer. So it's difficult for everyone. It really is difficult for everyone. But I'd be happy now if Big John and that team was to get the job, definitely. As Keith said there regarding the media, I think that's one of the biggest, not failings, but one of the issues that Stephen had when he was the manager, that he was kind of giving up in the whole country that we have a chance of qualifying, where I don't really think we ever did. And I don't even really think we do in the next coming years. Where it's you have that lovable rogue like John who can, everyone loves him. No one has a bad word to say about Big John. Like, he can go into the media and kind of play things as they are. Brilliant. Let's just go. Big learning curve now for the next few years.
yeah, and it's felt like years now that we've been waiting for this announcement to be made. But anyway, swiftly moving on. I think we spent enough time on this for the moment. So look, League of Ireland, we will have a live match this Friday night, and that is Derry City against Shamrock Rovers, which will be on RT2 and RT Player. Coverage starts at 7:35, and obviously last week there was a slight delay, or on Friday there was a slight delay to all the kickoffs, because the League of Ireland referees took strike action ahead of all games in the Premier and First Division by delaying kickoffs by 5 minutes in protest over a number of issues, notably safety concerns. And Stephen Bradley as well backed them, citing Shamrock Rovers' own experiences, citing his own, and also Pico Lopez in terms of safety within grounds. And when the referees got here, we had a conversation and they explained it was over their fears of safety in certain grounds. I agree with them. No one should go out to work and not feel safe in any environment. That relates to the issue of pyros, and this might be a good time, Eoin, to plug your column on rte.ie/sport as well, because this was a matter you discussed in your Friday piece, and that while there are pros in terms of atmosphere that comes with the colour and the light that the pyro brings, the cons definitely outweigh it, and it's leading to safety issues, and mainly because of the behaviour of a minority.
Yeah, of course. The guy, obviously, when I was playing and all, I loved it. I loved it, and there's a bit of there's a wonderful thing about pyro when you're playing, you're on the pitch, is that it can still the moment for you. So like you feel as if things kind of have to be a bit delayed, and there's a bit of a moment where you can kind of take in what's going on here in a really good atmospheric situation, and it makes it really enjoyable, and it can kind of fill you with gratitude that like I'm one of the players here involved in this situation, you know. And I would have obviously, like, Jesus, only a couple of weeks ago I would have been saying, can we not have a safe area for this pyro or whatever? But then because we've been talking about it so much, you come to hear that pyro is actually illegal. First and foremost, it's impossible to do that. And then I think Mark Scanlon was saying that even if you were to have the sand buckets nearby, that even creates problems. In the sense that they could actually create a bomb as such. You know what I mean? So it's actually very, very dangerous. And I think I touched on the piece where, for all the stories that we've seen with obviously the Keane Bourne situation, and then the linesman up in Drogheda, that there's been actually a lot of situations at the start of the season where fans' clothes are getting burnt and stuff, young kids as well. So I'm coming very close to getting serious injuries. And when you can't, like, officials and players cannot go onto the pitch now, and even for a second feel that you're not safe. Now, if someone's gone over to take a corner or a throw in these tight little grounds that we have, to feel unsafe, it'll actually affect performances. 100% will affect performances. When you're on that pitch, you have to have the freedom and the will to express yourself, no matter what. If you're going out there and you're thinking at any moment here I could get something in the back of the head, kind of has to stop. So I think pyro has to end now. And I don't know, maybe if maybe one of the young scientists in the young scientist competition come up with some alternative for us and make a few bad for himself in the future. But until that happens, no, I think it has to go. And the
Yeah.
refs are right. The refs are right to make a big deal of it and come out on their side. Like they get enough abuse as it is. Like they get enough abuse as it is, and to be struck with these things, it can't happen.
Yeah, no, it definitely draws a line under it. But anyway, in terms of results on Friday night, after those games did kick off, Drogheda United and Derry City drew 2-2. Dundalk and St. Pat's also a draw, but scoreless in that case. Bows won 2-1 away at Shelbourne in the TV game, and then Waterford and Galway also a scoreless draw, with Waterford having a player sent off very late on as well. And then Shamrock Rovers 3-0 winners over Sligo. And we might start on Shelbourne first, but let's listen to Alan Reynolds, the Bohemians manager, and then his Shells counterpart Damien Duff, who were both speaking to Tony O'Donoghue.
Yeah, great. Look, bouncing back from last week, and as I said, we had a week to work with the fellas, and I think you could see the improvements. Saying that the first 20 minutes they came out of the blocks and we struggled, but after that we adapted. Delighted for the players, the effort they put in, but it's a start for us, as I say.
The penalty to set you on your way was well dispatched by Jordan Flores.
Yeah, and I thought he was excellent on the night, and well deserved man of the match. He's led by example. He's frustrated, I suppose, with the way results have gone, but a really great performance.
And we asked him about, has he done enough now to persuade you that midfield is his best position rather than centre half?
Look, in 10 days I might tell him something different, but he was outstanding tonight.
And the move for the goal, that was obviously a training ground move. Yeah,
in fairness to Derek Pender, he worked on it and it's something he touched on, so all the credit is to him, but the delivery was fantastic and the desire to score was top class. Thank you.
Damien, it was inevitable, you weren't going to go the whole season unbeaten. What have you said to your players?
It's just reset button. It was a reset button at half time. I thought we came out and played well again. I thought we were the better team. I don't think we deserved to lose the game, Tony. I think they've done a job on us. Long clearance, haven't dealt with a poor goal to give away. Got too emotional, lost their calm, and obviously give away the set piece again straight after. Outside of that, very proud of the guys. And we go again next Friday.
When you got your penalty to bring you back in the game, it looked like you had the momentum, and then maybe Bows were being streetwise, street smart, going down and kind of taking the momentum away from you.
Yeah, you can't knock that. It's the dark arts of football. I thought we lost our calm after we scored our goal. There's still nearly half an hour left, Tony, 25 minutes. So, no, listen, I couldn't be prouder of the lads. And we go again.
One issue Conan Byrne brought up during the half-time was the pitch. Is it helping you? Because when you're trying to run with the ball, as you know better than anybody, if the pitch isn't great, it's not that easy.
Listen, I'm not going down that route again. It was obviously better than a couple of weeks ago. It's no excuse. It's the same for both teams. And like I said, for large spells of the game, I thought we were the better team. They've done a job enough. Hats off to them. Well done.
All right, so that's Damien Duff there. Keith, what do you make of Damien Duff's view there? Did you see Shells as the better team overall, and it was just a case of getting done with first the penalty and then the set piece with which Jordan Flores, who had converted the penalty anyway, drifted around the back and headed in?
No, I don't think Shelbourne were clearly the better team. Maybe slightly shaded it at times, but I thought it was a very even contest. It was a great Dublin derby, and you hear listening to Alan Reynolds there before the game, he's saying he had a week to work with the players, and you can see that starting to progress onto the pitch now. But I did the Galway and Bows game a couple of weeks ago, and Jordan Flores went into centre half, and that was the deal with how Galway are going to play lots of balls into the box, and he stood up that game. He was really, really good. I've seen him play left back as well. At times he can pop into midfield. He's a little bit of everything. He's got a brilliant left foot, and the header he scored, whatever about the penalty, lovely composure to put the penalty away, but the header's a real thing of beauty for me. Meeting a flush on the forehead, just ghosting in around the back. And as Damien Duff says there, Shelbourne then got themselves back into the game, but Bows were good. They used the dark arts, the game management, just stead down, took the sting out of the game at times, and it's exactly what you need to do. And I've seen this Bows team at the start of the season in Inchicore and up the top of the pitch with Connolly, Clark, Akatunde. There's some really decent players up there, and I think when Bows fans get annoyed, it's because they have the top end of the pitch. They have the players to go and hurt people. Defensively can be slightly weak at times, but under Alan Reynolds now, it seems to have getting a little bit more solidity, a little bit harder to play against them. Very few teams will go and beat Shelbourne this season. They're a very, very tough, awkward team to play against. Do the basics of the game really, really well. And as Damien Duff says there, look, we've lost. It's no big deal. We reset and we go again. I think even the most ardent Shelbourne fan must be still over the moon with how it's going. But Bows seem to have possibly maybe turned the corner, and I don't know where the limit is for Bows this season. I think if they were still Europe will be in their sights, but might be difficult with that leaky defence at the minute.
Yeah, and Owen, I suppose Mark Coyle and JJ Lunny in the middle for Shells were probably they've been kind of the key bedrock in the centre of the park. But Coyle did have to go off with an injury, so that's a potential blow depending on the extent of that.
Oh, he's been excellent for them since the start of the season. He's been excellent since he first signed for them, but he's really stepped up this year. And you can see that like how good the coaches are in the sense of Joey and Damien in there. Is that like he's improved so much. He's such an example of it. His fitness levels are through the roof. All their fitness levels are through the roof. But they've got a good base there in that midfield, and it helps protect that back four who are quite experienced. Obviously, got young Malloy, who's probably one of the best young players in the league at the minute. And then they've got Gannon, Paddy Barrett, and Wilson, and with Paddy and Sean, like they've got titles behind them as well. So lots of experience there to help them, and arguably the best keeper in the league at the minute. So he obviously made a mistake for the penalty or whatever, but he's very rarely making mistakes, So they're doing very well. They've had a great start to the season, and like I think as Keith touched on there, you look at the Shells fans looking at how it's going. If they finish every round like this, they win the league. Simple as that. So they'll be delighted how it is. And I'd say Damien deep down was like he knew this loss was coming. It's how they're going to react to it, and he'll be drilling them hard this week now going into the weekend fixtures.
Yeah, and Bows, on the other hand, they're back in action. They're playing Dundalk tonight at Dalymount Park, and given how Dundalk are going, that's a good opportunity for Bows to try and build a bit of momentum. But on the other hand, for Derry City, Keith, I mean, they managed to come back from a goal down to go ahead of Drogheda United. Then they get pegged back, and obviously they're missing Patrick Hoban at the moment as well, who had scored in the corresponding fixture against Drogheda towards the start of the season. And Derry's inconsistency is a bit of an issue, particularly when we look at the fact that they're playing Shamrock Rovers this weekend, and Shamrock Rovers, while inconsistent themselves, they tend to kick on in the middle of the season, and and Derry haven't really made the most of Shamrock Rovers' early slip-ups this season so far.
Yeah, it's almost a carbon copy of last season, isn't it? When Shamrock Rovers weren't at their best, there was nobody really to go and take full advantage of it. And again, we've just finished the first round of fixtures, and Shamrock Rovers haven't been at their best, struggled to get some wins on the board, and Derry haven't really stood on their throats. Pats have been stuttering as well, and it just doesn't look like anybody's going to poke their head above the crowd and be able to really give the Shamrock Rovers a bit of a kick up the arse. And if you're part of that Shamrock Rovers team and you haven't been playing too well, and you have a quick glance at the table, you're thinking, Jesus, how are we that close to it already? Because the first 45 minutes against Pats, Shamrock Rovers were unbelievable. It's probably the best 45 minutes I've seen them play. But the second 45 was really, really poor. And you're looking at Derry, and you're always looking at your phone and seeing how Derry are getting on. And Drogheda was always going to be a tough game, because Drogheda don't give you anything easy. They're a difficult team to play against. Although people, sometimes you can be lazy and think, oh, they're not full time. We should be turned over easily enough. That's very rarely the case with Drogheda. They're a very, very good team. Big fan of Darren Markey in the middle of the pitch. Gary Deegan as well, a workhorse in there, a leader. Very, very difficult team to play against. But if you're Derry, you've got to be beating the likes of Drogheda. If you want to win the league, if you want to be there or thereabouts going into the last round of fixtures, you have to beat Drogheda away. It's as simple as that. And they had their chances in the game. They had some dominance, but they also let Drogheda into it. So, again, you're looking at them thinking, Hughes, for me, on paper, are the closest ones to Shamrock Rovers, but you look at the pitch up in Derry for them. I don't think the Astro actually helps them. I think it takes away from Derry, and so many times they go on the road and they're inconsistent. So I just don't see them consistently being able to have a go off Shamrock Rovers. But as a standalone fixture, it'll really, really hurt that they haven't been able to go and get the win against Drogheda. Because as I say, if you're playing these teams that are being tipped for relegation or to be the lower end of the table, you need to be taking maximum points off them, and Derry are stuttering again.
I was just going to ask you, I mean, what do you think are Derry's deficiencies? I mean, given that they have been pegged for a couple of years, given their investment and the players they've drafted in, as the natural challengers to Shamrock Rovers, but they're not really getting near them, and we see Shelbourne are the ones making the run. And where in the team itself, or what is holding Derry back, do you see at the moment?
The
Well,
biggest thing is their pitch.
Mm.
The biggest thing is their pitch, yeah. The another thing about them is like while they've recruited very well, they've recruited injury prone players. So like obviously like they're still missing Dummigan and McElhenney in the middle of that pitch. Now, don't get me wrong, O'Reilly and Patchen are very good players, but the other two are they're the ones that win you the league, you know. Like
does that come back
Duffy,
around
Kelly.
pitch Doyle or them injuries?
You never know. Like it's hard not to. Like it's not going to help. It's not like McElhenney's obviously had a tough time over through his whole career with injuries. I played with him at Oldham and he was in and out of injury there, and there wasn't an Astro in sight. But like, it's not going to help, is it? If you're especially if you're going from different surfaces week in week out. 1 week he's training on grass, going to play against Drogheda, for example. And the next week it's the hard surface of an Astro. And then the years he put in at Dundalk and arguably one of the worst pitches I've ever seen in my life. Like it's not like the standard of that Astro is like it's beyond atrocious. That can't have helped his body, like, you know. But like going back to it, like that pitch doesn't help them as a club. Definitely doesn't. Like if they had a nice grass pitch there and they were like had something similar to Tala, for example, they'd definitely be getting more points on the board. Like their home record over the last few years has not been great, especially for a team that's supposed to be challenging, you know.
Yeah, and on the other hand, in terms of Friday, Shamrock Rovers, of course they're coming into that game off the back of a 3-0 win over Sligo Rovers, and Aaron Green chipping in with goals at the start of this season, Keith, and he's been key at a time where we've seen Rory Gaffney missing a couple of games, and then Johnny Kenny's had an injury or two and sort of been in and out as well, and then also he did assist Graham Burke. He teed him up for the sort of long range goal for that opener against Sligo too.
Yeah, and again, I think that's probably one of the reasons that Derry do struggle. When you look at when Shamrock Rovers 1 or 2 aren't firing, they've got so much quality on the bench. I think their bench is way and above anybody else's bench, so they're a little bit ahead in terms of the starting 11, and the options from the bench are brilliant. And Aaron Green is the one who's picking up the mantle. If any other team had Rory Gaffney in it and Rory Gaffney wasn't firing, that team would be struggling. And I know Shamrock Rovers haven't been at their best, but there's always seems to be another one on the conveyor belt just to go in and do a job. Darragh Burns, for me, you know, as a Pats fan and an ex-winger, I take real interest in Darragh Burns, and he's getting better and better. Where every game he's playing, his delivery when he comes in on his left foot, the way he can manipulate the ball left and right. I really, really like watching him, and I do think they're starting to warm up Rovers. I think since Lopez has gone back into the team when he returned from international duty, it's just started to get a little bit more solid. Not as solid as Stephen Bradley would like, but they're definitely getting there. And Shamrock Rovers beating Sligo at home 3-0. It's fairly routine now, and it's what we expect from Shamrock Rovers. And it's just the starting 11 and the bench, Raf. It's so formidable. Like, you can bring them, they can bring you into deep waters. If it's 0-0 after 60, 70 minutes, you look across and some of the boys they're bringing off the bench, it just sends a shiver up your spine as you're getting tired. So I can't see past Shamrock Rovers. Again, they're not at their best, but I just think they have so much talent on and off the pitch willing to come on that can't see past them.
Yeah, and meanwhile, Dundalk, bottom of the table at the moment, ground out a point against Pats in the first game since parting with Stephen O'Donnell, and Liam Burns and Brian Gartland were in caretaker charge for that game, and it's now a club record 5 home games in a row without scoring for the Lily Whites. And Owen, when you look at Dundalk, are you looking at tactical issues, player quality, or in their case as well, given the pitch, is that also a huge factor in terms of what's been holding them back?
Well, I think the pitch is an advantage to them in the sense of like they get to train on it all the time, and it's really hard for the away team going up there. Like when I was ever playing up there, I was actually nervous going onto the pitch. You know, you'd be kind of afraid to make a sharp turn and stuff. You know, you feel like your knee's gonna come out of your leg type of carry on. But it's I wouldn't put it down to tactics in the recent weeks. I think if you looked at Stevie as a manager in the whole, he's been a good manager over the last number of years. He's always had good teams and stuff, and he's done well for himself and for the clubs that he was representing. So I don't know about that. Maybe player recruitment might be more of an issue they have there. But regarding the game on Friday there, like I think Pats would like to come away with the win. I think Mason Mealy probably had the best chance on the night. He went through and Shelby made a good save from him. But no, it'll be interesting to see who gets that job now. It's a good job to actually get. Like the only way you can go is up. You know, you're going in and there'll be a summer window. I'm sure they'll have to make a good few additions there, but it'll be a good job, and it'll be interesting to see who goes to take it.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, Keith, Waterford and Galway, their draw, which again, a 0-0. I suppose both of them would be fairly happy with it, but then I guess when you actually look at how the table is actually shaken out at the moment, where obviously Dundalk are, they're not cut adrift or anything, but they're on 4 points winless. Then you've Drogheda on 8, and then just 3 points above that, despite having a good start to the season, you've Galway on 11, and then just above that, then by a point, Waterford and Sligo on 12. A draw suddenly doesn't look as good for either side because the gap, I suppose, the gap with the bottom two isn't as big as one would think, even at this point of the season.
Yeah, you're right, Raf. I'm a little bit surprised it's that close because I did think Waterford and Galway had they've had really good starts to the season. And I thought they'd have been a little bit further up the league, but they're just starting to filter their way back down there, and Drogheda and Dundalk are the ones propping it up. But look, I said it last season. I think Waterford have more than enough to stay in the league. Asamoah on the wing is absolutely lightning, and the one thing defenders can't defend against is pace. If you can run past somebody, it's so hard to deal with it. In Galway, they're just a tough team. John Cartwheel's team, Ollie Horgan down there, they'll put an awful lot of balls into the box, and one thing they'll do, they'll make you defend. And an awful lot of modern coaches, modern managers, it's all about when we have the ball, when we have the ball. Galway won't have the ball for very long, but when they do, they're going to make you defend, and they're going to make you do the horrible stuff. And a lot of teams shy away from that. And, physical battles, putting their head into horrible areas. Am I going to get hurt? Am I not? And David Hurley as well is always just backing that up and has a decent left foot to go and finish things. So I think Galway will be fine. I think Waterford will be fine as well. So you're looking at Drogheda and Dundalk, and look, I like Drogheda. I think they're one of my ex-clubs. They stick around, and I'd be very, very sad to see them go. And Dundalk is such a big club. You've only to throw your mind back at, was it 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago? They were totally dominant within the Irish League. So very, very difficult to see either one of those going down. So look, I'm not sure if it's brilliant. Like, you look up the top of the league, I'm assuming Shamrock Rovers will go and win it without too many problems. But looking down the bottom, I have no idea who's going to be relegated. Absolutely none. And I think that's where all the drama is going to be this season.
Yeah, and just a quick reminder, this Friday, Derry City against Shamrock Rovers, only a point separating them, 16 and 15 respectively. RT2 and the RT Player 7:35 coverage starts. And then the first division, Athlone beat Finn Harps 1-0. Wexford were 4-2 winners away at Cove Ramblers. Treaty United and Kerry shared the points and 0-0 draw there. Kerry's unbeaten run going on, which is really good for them in just their second season. Cork City away from home, a 0-0 draw with UCD. We might talk about their pitch at home in terms of Turner's Cross very shortly. And then Bray Wanderers were 3-0 winners at Longford Town. And Conor, this resulted in the end, this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the changes there, and Stephen Henderson parting ways with the club. And then he did put out a very classy statement afterwards as well, but it just felt that this was sort of coming, or at least there would be a change, because they are, they're rooted right at the bottom, and it's been a really poor start to the season in terms of results.
They're languishing, and losing 3-0 in Kerry, becoming the first team I think to lose away to Kerry was a real landmark result. And then this weekend, really, it was the end for it. They're at the bottom. They've struggled the last 2 seasons, the last season and a half. I mean, up until as late as 2022, they were still regular sort of playoff contenders, and they had, of course, got promoted in 2020 and came straight back down. And now they seem to be back to sort of at the paddling in the nether regions of the first division. I don't know if that relates to the regulations that came in around the minimum wage or something, or issues around that. They seem to have struggled since then. So it's difficult to know where they go from here. Crowds have dropped off. I think they got a strong crowd at the start of the season, but they've really dropped off since then, and possibly largely in response to results. I mean, it does tend to be the case with Longford Town that if the team isn't performing, the crowds really dwindle. And it's a bit of a reconstruction job there for whoever comes in. I mean, it's I know you floated Stephen Kenny to me the other day, but I'm worried the job might be a bit. I'm worried the job might be a bit too big for him. I'm sure that's not the case. But
I feel like just for the public, just so that I'm not judged, that I might have to issue a denial there.
No, that was my comment, and that's a joke. But There are some parallels, incidentally, with when Kenny took over, because they had, of course, finished last in the 1990. You won't remember this, Raf, I'm sure. The 97-98 season, they finished bottom with, I think they won 2 games all year, finished with 12 points. I seem to recall the jerseys were robbed out of the back of a van near the end of the season. They lost 6-0 playing in some strange jersey that no one had ever seen before against Limerick. And Kenny came in that summer, and by Christmas of 98, they were top of the first division. So maybe that'll happen again. Who knows next year?
Yeah, look, let's float the rumour. Stephen Kenny is coming back to Longford Town and bringing them back to former cup-winning glories at some point. But the other story to mention, of course, is Cork City and Turner's Cross being closed indefinitely. And this was off the back of, and this was announced last Monday, so it was just after we'd recorded last week's podcast. And it followed the Cork derby between Cork and Cove, and the pitch looked in a right state at that stage, and that certainly didn't help. But on Game On Tuesday, I was chatting to the Irish Examiner's chief sports writer, Tony Lean, about, I suppose, the fallout from it, because now there is going to be a little bit of fixture chaos in terms of what, like, are Cork going to be, Cork obviously can't play at Turner's Cross, so what are the solutions? But anyway, here in this clip, he sets the scene.
You know, Raf, it's one of those topics really that's been bubbling under, I think, in all our subconsciousness practically all the time now, just with the weather we've been having, and, you know, whether you go across the sports and whether it's in the professional or the amateur sphere, you know, there's nobody basically getting on grass at the moment, whether it's for training or for matches. And I think it's only when we see this kind of development happening that everybody kind of goes, well, you know, that was an accident waiting to happen, wasn't it? And with Storm Kathleen last weekend, I mean, hindsight is a great thing, but with the rain, the deluges that we had in the southern part of the country last Friday, like I was talking to somebody from Cork City today, and they were saying the difference between Turner's Cross at 11 o'clock last Friday morning and then that afternoon at 3 or 4 o'clock was incredible. And then playing 90 minutes on top of it absolutely basically decimated the surface. And I mean, I don't know whether you've been to Turner's Cross before, but it is one of the best surfaces in the League of Ireland. So it unfortunately just brought the matter to a head. And the question really of whether this is a short-term problem or a serious longer-term issue for Cork City, I suppose, will depend on the diagnosis from the pitch specialist over the next few days. I mean, if it's a short-term problem and, you know, you can reverse fixtures as the women's team have done for this weekend, then obviously it's manageable. But if it becomes a kind of a 6-week, 2-month issue for Cork City where they're saying that you can't play here for that period of time, well, then both the men's and the women's League of Ireland teams have serious issues, because you obviously can't flip every fixture, you know, to the other teams to give them home venue first. And so then obviously you're looking at plan Bs and Cs and Ds at that stage. And obviously that's not something Cork City have had to do in the past, but the reality is that it's happening now, and obviously it'll be over the next, I suppose, probably over the next 2 to 3 days that the club itself and the Munster FA will actually get a better indication of the real state of the pitch.
Yeah, so no confirmation in terms of what the solution is for this Friday coming, because Cork are playing at home, or due to play Longford Town coincidentally this Friday, and then it's Finn Harps at home also next Friday. So it's not quite clear what's happening for the next couple of weeks. But the women's Premier Division team, they did flip their fixture, as Tony Lean said there, and they played DLR Waves away and they drew 1-1. The big game between Shelbourne and Shamrock Rovers, that ended in a 0-0 draw. And then Treaty United and Sligo Rovers drew 0-0. Galway United, top of the women's Premier Division at the moment, 4 wins from 4. 4-0 winners over Bohemians. And then Athlone Town beat Peamount, the reigning champions, 3-1. So what that does to the table, Galway top on 12, Athlone 7 points, and then Shells and Peamount on 6. So it's a brilliant start for Galway there. And then in other news as well, Hannah Dingley has been appointed as the new head of women's and girls football with the Football Association of Ireland. She replaces Eileen Gleeson, the current Republic of Ireland head coach, after Eileen moved to become head coach of the national team. But before we go, we're going to talk Champions League and also Premier League as well, and I suppose the death knell of the title race. But first, Champions League, we've got Barcelona Barcelona against PSG live on RT2 and RT Player tomorrow, Tuesday from 7:30 p.m. and highlights of Dortmund v Atletico to follow after that. And Keith, I imagine from that, just briefly on that Barcelona PSG game, Mbappe is hardly going to stay quiet for 2 games in a row. And Barcelona seem to be on a roll ever since Xavi announced that he was stepping away at the end of the season. 13 games unbeaten now.
Yeah, Barcelona look really good for me, but I would be like you, Raf. There's something coming from Mbappe. You know, you can feel it. It's very, very hard to keep him under wraps. But what I will say is, you know, I went to see him in the Aviva. I brought me teenage daughter because he's one of the best players in the world and he's all over these social media. So she showed a little bit of interest. I brought her along. And when we came outside the Aviva, she said to me, I don't see what the fuss is, Daddy. He didn't do anything. And I think he does that way too often. You know, when we think of the elite players, and I'm talking Messi, Ronaldo, the big boys, for Mbappe to make that jump, he has to be more consistent. And I know he's younger. I know he's a winger, not as prominent as Ronaldo and Messi, but if he wants to be taken in that same breath, for me, he has to be more consistent. He has to make the difference on nights like tomorrow night in the Champions League. And too often he's been too quiet. But this Barcelona team, when you look at Gavi's been out with a cruciate ligament injury, they're still just trucking on. And I really like how they go about it, but I don't see either of these winning the Champions League. I'm sure that's a bridge they'll cross when they come to it. But in terms of this tie, I think Barcelona can do it. I think they were outstanding in the first leg and they'll have enough just to get it done in the second.
Yeah, there are a couple of really good young players to watch as well. Pau Cubarsí at the back, who's only 17 years old, who just seems to a problem position for them in recent times. He seems to have filled the gap there. And also you have the youngster Lamine Yamal, the former Spain under-17 international, who's now a Spain senior international, only 16 years old and playing brilliantly. But on the other game, then there's games on Wednesday that are huge as well and finally poised. And one of those is, of course, Real Madrid going to Manchester City after drawing 3-3 in the Santiago Bernabeu. And looking at Real Madrid's pace, Manchester City's high line, anything could happen again, and we could be treated to another classic.
Yeah, what a forced fixture that was. Like 3-0, I thought City we're gonna come away with the win at one stage as well, and then just one of the best quality goals in a game I've ever seen. Like all 6 goals were just different class, and I'd expect Madrid to go to Man City and to sit back. So let them have the ball. You know, they have the quality of Vinicius Junior and the pace to get out. Or just like for whatever about Real Madrid. You look at Man City in their matches, and as the game's going on, you think, oh, they're going to win this. They've got complete dominance over the opposition, and that's including against the likes of Real Madrid. And they had moments like that last week when they were playing against them. But with Real Madrid, there's just something about them that you can just never, ever, ever write them off. Not down to the final second of the match. You look at Vinicius' cross, or I think it was Valverde last week, and it's finished into the bottom corner out of nowhere, like just exceptional stuff. So I'm really looking forward to that game. Yeah, would I call the winner? I couldn't tell you, but I definitely wouldn't be writing off Real Madrid.
Yeah, and Rodri did have a rest at the weekend as well against Luton Town, because he was quite vocal about saying that he does need a rest. Now he's obviously, arguably, you would say he's their Manchester City's best player, and probably their most important player in a sense that he provides that balance in midfield. And Keith, were you surprised that he was so vocal about it? You know, usually I would imagine there's players would tend to try and keep that sort of in-house, but the fact that he actually does, he was quite open to the fact that he does need a bit of a break and he does need a rest. He put that on public record.
Yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it? A lot of these things these days seem to play out in front of everybody's eyes, whereas I think in my day, you'd have just knocked on the manager's door and said, listen, I'm a bit tired, is there any chance? And more than likely he would get the stats up and think, yeah, right, you've been running, you played every game for the last 2 months, we'll give you a rest. And it would be done behind closed doors. Why it seems to be playing out in front of everybody is beyond me. But it's a difficult one from Rodri, because if he comes out and says that and Pep was planning on starting him, you're trying to force the manager's hand. So I imagine that there was a knock on the door and Rodri had said it to Pep, and Pep had said, yeah, don't worry, you will be rested. And he sort of then came out and said, oh yeah, I am tired, I need to be rested, just so everybody knows he hasn't been dropped. But look, that Manchester City team is unbelievable. I do think Rodri, it's funny because Rodri didn't get anywhere near these plaudits until he came out of the team and things started to unravel all of a sudden. And every now and then you get a player that doesn't really do anything on the eye, but when he comes out, it just starts to unravel and you see how important he is. And that is Rodri, the most touches in the Premier League. Everything seems to go through him. Defensively, not bad. And he will have to keep his eye on Jude Bellingham as well. I've already spoke about him at length. I think he's probably the best player in the world right now. So he'll have to be looked after. And I think a big plus for City during the week is Kyle Walker will be back. So that pace of Vinicius Junior, Kyle Walker can just sit on him, and he's probably the only defender in the world that Vinicius wouldn't be able to get away from in a foot race. So I think it's finely poised. And although I expect City to go and win it, I do think there'll be some scares along the way. Real Madrid might go in front with that counter-attacking style. There's every chance they'll get on the score sheet. So really, really tough game, and I'm hopeful City can get past Real Madrid.
Yeah, and then from an Arsenal
You're hoping that so Arsenal go on to win the league. You extra time and penalties you're hoping for as well, aren't you?
Oh yeah, a couple of injuries as well. De Bruyne comes off, Foden, the whole lot.
Yeah. Speaking of Arsenal, obviously they're going away to Bayern Munich 2-2 from the first leg, and they were coming into this period, Keith, and I'll stick with Arsenal with you, obviously, because you watch them more closely than anyone else does. But they were coming into that first leg having cut out mistakes and being really defensively solid, and then in the last 4 days, first when Bayern go to the Emirates, two games at the Emirates, first Bayern and then Aston Villa, 2 goals conceded in each game, and they don't look. Something seems to have broken a little bit there. They don't seem quite as composed and as solid. Yeah,
they've taken the Aston Villa one out of the equation. I think they look nervous against Bayern Munich. I do. I think they haven't been here in their recent history. I think it's 14 years since Arsenal have been to the Champions League quarter-final. So there is going to be a few nerves. And I wouldn't say it was disrespectful, but everybody was saying to me, this Arsenal team should be fine. I know Bayern Munich have the history, but they should be fine. And maybe it's a decent draw for Arsenal. I was thinking it's not a decent draw for Arsenal. I know Bayern Munich are way off the pace in the Bundesliga. Bayer Leverkusen have gone and won that. But Serge Gnabry, Leroy Sané, Musiala and Harry Kane is the front four. That sends shivers up my spine. Them 2 wingers, Gnabry and Sané, can go and hurt anybody. And Musiala can manipulate the ball, pop up in little spots here and there. And I don't need to tell anybody about the dangers of Harry Kane playing up front. So I was always a little bit sceptical about how we can go about this. I'm hopeful that when we go to Munich, there's a little bit more emphasis on Bayern Munich to control the play, and that might just let our front players go and get a little bit looser, and we can go and hurt them a little bit more. But I didn't see an awful lot in it. When you look at the league forms of the 2 clubs, there should be only one winner. But when you look at it on paper, it's a very, very, very tight game. And with so much talent on the pitch, it's not a surprise to me that Bayern Munich have turned up all of a sudden. But again, with the key battles, I think Alphonso Davies is suspended for the second leg. I think he picked up a yellow. So you would imagine Saka's going to have a big, big say on that right wing all of a sudden, because I love Alphonso Davies going forward. He's brilliant in 1v1 battles, very, very capable. So him coming out there, I think, will lean again into Arsenal's favour, and playing away from home, I think will favour Arsenal. And with the Premier League's not gone mathematically, but I think everybody is saying it's City's now to lose, and City aren't going to lose it. So are we going to throw all our eggs into the Champions League basket? I think so. I think we will. I think we're going to roll the dice here and see where it brings us. But I'm not too sure we won't get a slap on the wrist. They have history. They're Champions League elitists. They're always here, Bayern Munich and Arsenal aren't. So I wouldn't be surprised what result we get here. We could get a 2-0 either way, or we could get a 2-2 again, and we go to penalties, Raf. I really don't know. But again, it excites me. And as an Arsenal fan, I did think that when we get deep into the Champions League, and if we're still in a race in the Premier League, it's going to, I don't want to say it's going to unravel, because we haven't got the squad strength to be competing on 2 fronts like this. So it was always going to happen. I've seen this iceberg coming, and it looks like we're about to hit the iceberg. Looks like we're out of the Premier League race. Can we prolong this? Can we go and beat Bayern Munich and get Champions League, get the semi-final against Manchester City? As an Arsenal fan, to say we took it deep into the Premier League and we got really deep into the Champions League, you have to be happy with the strength of the Premier League and the strength of the Champions League. I think you have to be happy. And the good thing is we're putting building blocks in place for the next season as well. We're getting stronger. We're not getting stagnant, and a lot of our players are mid-20s to, they're decent ages, so they'll be around for a long, long time. So again, I'm happy, and with Eric Dyer playing at that Bayern Munich back four, there's every chance he'll he'll make a mistake and we'll do something.
All right, well, we'll see what happens there because Conor, the Premier League title race is over, isn't it? The greatest title race of all time, done and dusted, finished on Sunday, the 14th of April.
Yeah, the greatest title race of all time. Is that what you're still intent on calling it that? Yeah, I mean, God be with the days when you could afford to lose 5 or 6 games and still win the league. I seem to recall Man United won one year on 75 points. I mean, that wouldn't get you to 5th place at this stage, as far as I can see. Yeah, it's somewhat depressing. I was hoping, like Keith, not as ardently as Keith, I'm sure, but I was hoping Arsenal might go the distance this time. Not so much Liverpool because of the sheer numbers of Liverpool fans on our desk, but yeah, I was hoping Arsenal would go the distance.
I'm not one of those, by the way.
You're
Just to be very clear, I'm complete neutral in this situation.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. I'm vindicating all the Twitter trolls over the years here by saying that, haven't I? No, I think yeah, it feels like with City's run-in, it's hard to see where they're going to slip up now at this point. I mean, if you were to look at the respective run-ins, you'd say their rivals are more likely to lose more points than they are to lose any at all. I mean, maybe Ange Postecoglou and Spurs will pop up and sort of trip them up at some point. I mean, traditionally Spurs weren't great for that, although I feel under him they have a bit more gumption about them and they could show up on the big day. So maybe they'll come out of left. I mean, it would pain them obviously to lay it on a plate for Arsenal, but maybe they'll come out of left field. But it's hard. City seem to be rolling into that groove, and we've seen it before. I mean, this is where they really hit peak form, and they've been here before. They'll be less jumpy about it. It feels like Liverpool have really run out of. The evidence of the last week is they're running out of steam, and it was very alarming, the Atalanta performance. I think everyone who follows them was clearly concerned about that, and there was an ominous air around that performance, and then we saw it yesterday. What happened?
Yeah, and City's running with their 6 remaining games. They've Brighton away. Obviously, they have an FA Cup game before that, but Brighton away on the 25th of April, and then 3 days later they're away at Nottingham Forest. Then they're at home against Wolves on the first Saturday of May, and then a week later they're away at Fulham. That Spurs game on the 14th, and then on the 19th, the final day, they play West Ham at home. But in terms of Liverpool, Eoin, I was watching that game here, and if you were to look at the balance of chances, that could have easily been like a 6-3 or a 5-4 or a 4-3. But Liverpool seem to be the forwards they have, and even with Jota coming back, they seem quite profligate, and they have this habit of conceding first, and you're almost rolling the dice the whole time when that happens.
Yeah, it's been an awful week for Liverpool. Obviously, you go back to the Man United result and to draw 2-2 at Old Trafford and to have them chances that they didn't put away. And then obviously you go into the game then midweek, you get a hiding at home, and then you watch the match yesterday, and it seems very obvious to me that it's complete fatigue and they've lost all ruthlessness in the top end of the pitch. It's like Jota comes off the bench, and even you think, oh, he'll tap this in now. And to be fair to Palace, they're doing great. They were throwing bodies on the line and stuff, but they just didn't have that ruthless edge of just burying the ball in the back of the net, something that you always kind of look at Liverpool with Salah and Jota in particular, and you think, yeah, these are ruthless in front of goal, and they seem to have they're really suffering in the top end of the pitch at the minute, and it's probably costing the title, being honest. Like, obviously you've touched on the fixtures coming up. I think Arsenal is probably, like, if you look at the fixtures coming up, you'd probably say Arsenal are the ones that will finish third and Liverpool will be second. But it's hard to see City dropping any points at all now. And as you said, the other two have got some tough fixtures coming along that's going to make it difficult. But now it's a shame. Like, I think for me, being a Liverpool fan, you were hoping for that emotional ending to Klopp's reign where he could win everything. Potentially they might be only going out with a Carabao Cup. So it's listen, he's done great. He's done great for Liverpool, and there's no complaints on that end. But the fairy tale ending most likely won't happen now.
Yeah, and it probably will be an emotional ending, but just not the right kind of emotions.
Yeah,
probably
not with titles, yeah.
No, not with titles anyway. But they do have a Carabao Cup, obviously, from a couple of months ago. But something that did get lost during the weekend, of course, as well, from an Irish perspective, Mark O'Mahony, the former Cork City forward, made his Premier League debut for Brighton. So that's again Brighton bringing through some Irish players as well. So that's huge for us. But before we go, Conor, we started this podcast podcast talking about the FAI and impending announcements in regard to the next manager. Actually, what's emerged and what's broken while we were recording here is that the Chief Executive Officer of the FAI, Jonathan Hill, will leave his post at the end of the month. Now, he's been in charge since November 2020. Now, his position had been under scrutiny for a period of time, particularly off the back of his appearance at the Public Accounts Committee a few months ago. But this is obviously a huge change now.
Yeah, breaking news while we were on the pod is Jonathan Hill is gone. This decision was communicated to staff at 11 a.m. And it's confirmed. It says immediate effect, but he'll be gone on the 30th of April. Or early April, as they probably call it in the FAI. So he's out. I mean, there was a sense that this was inevitable after his appearance at the Public Accounts Committee, where he was heavily criticised over that 11,500 payment he got in lieu of holidays not taken, and then there was the issue of his salary breaching the bailout agreement, and so felt like his days were numbered. So after 4 years, he's out, and not a very happy reign. I mean, it won't go down as poorly in history, one would imagine, as his predecessor as chief executive. But I mean, it was a slightly chaotic and forgettable era in charge of the FAI, and they'll obviously have to change tack. And it's been a difficult period, and who knows who will come in now.
Yeah, so a busy period for the FAI, surely as well, given that apparently this week was when they're supposed to be at least trying to finalise the appointment of a next Ireland men's manager. But we'll have to see what happens here.
Endless chaos in there.
You never stop being surprised at this stage. But anyway, what isn't going to be a surprise, of course, as I said earlier, we've Derry City against Shamrock Rovers, an RT2 and RT player on Friday, and then tomorrow we've Barcelona against PSG, with the highlights also of Dortmund against Atletico, which is also finally poised. Atletico having won their first leg 2-1. All that to look forward to at the moment. And then, of course, the Premier League title race I suppose it's over, we've said, but obviously the refixtures again this weekend, although City have an FA Cup game. But Keith and Eoin, thanks very much for your time, and Conor, Neville as well, as always.